Hey, hey, this is Sound Booth Theater Live. We are live with it. And this is the second part of the cold reads, um, which started last Friday of The Legend of 030's Return. Was really, really fun to get back into this series. Started off pretty crazy. For anyone who wasn't here last time, I'm about to go into spoilers of chapter one right now. And what happened was we basically got this whole almost an hour long chapter of an intro to a new character named 12A, who was an experimental human being worked on by a secret government agency that was trying to create a super psychic in order to defend the planet from Congress. And Congress has been searching the planet, apparently, for any weapons creation, anything. Basically, it's against the law on Earth to create weapons. I'm not sure exactly what classifies as a weapon to them. I think maybe they're not talking about knives and guns. They're talking about anything that could actually help them defend themselves against Congress. So it turned out they were looking for weapons, and the super psychic that they created, 12A, discovered this and knew that if they found the base, that if Congress found their base, that they would come to destroy the planet. So, despite the fact that he had every reason to kill these people that were experimenting on him and kept him locked up and kept, forcing him to kill other people, despite the fact that he had those reasons, the main reason was just to save the planet. And yeah, he killed everybody. It was pretty sweet. It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome chapter, and I'm looking forward to moving forward with it. Moving on to chapter 2 to see how this ties into the rest of the story. Looking forward to seeing Joe again. I don't know how far ahead in time this book is supposed to be compared to book 2. But we did, okay, so that was an hour, that was like a 50-minute chapter, and we went through 4% of the book. So, it's looking like, this is going to be a 20-hour book, another 20 hours. So, we're in it for the long run, y'all. Alright, so I don't see Sarah yet in the green room. I'm going to go ahead and get started. If she jumps in, she jumps in. I'll watch out. But can't make any promises that I'll let her in time. She might have to wait. She'll be scared. She'll be scared in the green room by herself, but I think that she'll be okay. Anyway. Alright, let's see. Rename to 2. And here goes. Chapter 2. A Human Mistake. Earth Representative Fred Mullock was scowling at the latest alarming reports from his home planet when the Watcher activated a node in his apartment without his permission. When the Watcher... Alarming reports from his home planet when the Watcher activated a... Okay, so the Watcher is something I'm introducing. I should narrate it that way, shouldn't I? Yes, Jeff, you should. Thank you. Earth Representative Fred Mullock was scowling at the latest alarming reports from his home planet when the Watcher activated a node in his apartment without his permission. There we go. Okay, so I hope that was how I'm supposed to pronounce Fred's last name. Mullock? Mullock? I'm going to say Mullock. Okay, this is an AI, perfectly human voice. Wait a minute, is the Watcher from book 2? Was his voice, was he like he's the AI of the building that um talked to the squid alien good guy? Cuz when I did his voice at that point, I did the I did an impression of my history teacher from high school. Yeah, okay. All right, so I'm going to try and go with the same voice with the London accent. Representative Mullock. Representative Mullock. The Regency requests your presence in its chambers. Representative Mullock. The Regency requests your presence in its chambers immediately for a Regency-wide disciplinary action. Shall I take you there now? Shall I take you there now? Representative Mullock, the Regency requests your... Representative Mullock, the Regency requests your presence in its chambers immediately for a Regency-wide disciplinary action. Shall I take you there now? There we go. The Watcher's voice was perfectly human, lacking any of the metallic or artificial quality of the other AIs. Okay, a note in his apartment. So this should be going through a speaker as well. So let's do that real quick. Did that wrong. Let's make sure this is the right. Nope, it's not. We'll do nice TV. Representative Mullock, the Regency requests your presence in its chambers immediately for a Regency-wide disciplinary action. Shall I take you there now? There we go. And is that one suited to a button? It is not. It should be this one, I'm going to say. Let's get rid of this one, shall we? All right. Artificial quality of the other eight. The Watcher's voice was perfectly human, lacking any of the metallic or artificial quality of other AIs. The Watcher's voice was perfectly human, lacking any of the metallic or artificial quality of other AIs. Of course, there were plenty of whispers that the Watcher wasn't an AI, but to say as much anywhere within the gravitational pull of Kolionaut was political suicide, at least for a representative as politically impotent as Fred Mullock. Today, the Watcher was using the London dialect, sharp and crisp. Fred wasn't sure if the Watcher knew it, but it switched to a British accent whenever it wanted Fred to take him seriously. More than a little spooked by the idiots back on Earth, Fred glanced at his call log. More than a little spooked by the idiots back on Earth, Fred glanced at his call log. Whoever was behind the Watcher's request was influential enough to not... Whoever was behind the Watcher's request was influential enough not to have to use the call feature, which would have required Fred's acknowledgement before the Watcher could speak to him, which meant a board chair or a tribunal member, which meant that which meant a board chair or a tribunal member, which meant that Fred would create an interplanetary incident if he ignored it. There she is. Tribunal member, which meant that... Your shit's still playing, Sarah? Oh my god! Trying to kill all of us.
What do you mean it's still playing?
You were trying to kill all of us. All of us.
Oh, okay, so Fred Mullock...
I could hear. Yeah.
Oh, I can hear an echo.
You can? One sec.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why. Here we go. How about that? Is it gone now?
I'll test it. Yep, echo's gone. Okay, so
Okay.
Fred Mullick is kind of a spineless kind of coward.
Mm-hmm.
And he he was basically chosen as a representative because he didn't make waves, and he's think politician
Mm-hmm.
that like is good at his job, and but not charismatic. He just does what he's told and tries to stay out of sight.
Okay. This is Fred Mullick. And Mullick is the right pronunciation.
Yep.
Okay. Ignored it.
Oh yeah, and also did you get the Watcher's British accent in the beginning because it says
Yep.
later it was British? Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Incident, if he ignored it. Is Fred English? Is that
Uh,
why he only
it
takes him
it
seriously when he hears an English accent?
doesn't have to be. Just I was thinking American accent, but you can
Okay.
do whatever you want.
Let's see. Give me a moment to finish what I was doing, Fred said, still desperately trying to make sense of the disturbing numbers on his screen. He needed to send a courier to Earth. Immediately, get some sort of explanation. And, for the love of God, convince them to cease and desist. This was the sort of crap that got planets pummeled back into their Stone Age for hundreds of turns, to give them a chance to serve penance. The Watcher's irritation was palpable, but it said nothing more. Instead, it merely hovered somewhere in the alien circuitry at the edges of his room, watching. His nervousness increasing, Fred continued flipping through the files he had been examining. He really didn't like what he was seeing. Back home, military and scientific expenditures had quadrupled in the last 3 turns. It almost looked as if Earth was preparing for a war. He needed to deal with this, and fast, before the other species representatives were given the same numbers he was reading. If they got wind of them, the insignificant planet Earth and its single sentient species would be obliterated, like a Dasha ripping apart a Vagi. This is important, Mullick. This is important, Mullick. The Watcher interrupted. The Regency can go on without me, Fred snapped.
Maybe a little bit older, and because he's definitely past middle age.
Okay. Give me a moment to finish what I was doing, Fred said.
And less full of spine. He has no spine.
That was full of spine? Okay.
Well, it's for what you did was forceful. He's not very forceful as a person.
He's desperately trying to make sense of disturbing numbers. Give me a moment to finish what I was doing.
Yeah, but you put emphasis into it that made him sound stronger than he is.
Okay. Give me a moment to finish what I was doing.
No. Okay, so okay, let me think about this a second. I don't have people. Let's see what YouTube people say about this, because they had good ideas last time. Oh man, nobody's saying anything. So he's just
less balls than that?
Okay, well, it's not necessarily balls, it's just like
I'm just reading Carrie's comment. He's a weasel, okay?
Yeah, he is a weasel, but not like a not like a used car salesman weasel. He's just afraid, but not like oh God. He just tries not to make waves. The person that tries to placate everybody else and tries not to make waves. But
Okay.
but not forceful in his speak. He's soft. There she goes. He's soft.
Okay, so should I ignore the desperately part of this direction then?
Yes, because that's more of a mental thing.
Okay. Give me a moment to finish what I was doing.
Can you give him a more manly sound?
Okay. All right, manly weasel with no spine.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so I don't
Manly
know.
weasel with no spine. All right. Give me a moment to finish what I was doing, Fred said.
Yes, that's so much better.
All right.
Because he has to, like, he is a representative, but he's just yeah, you have the patience of a saint, Carrie says.
Okay.
But yeah, that's much, much better.
All right.
He's a pushover.
The Regency can go on without me, Fred snapped.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
The-
Maybe a little bit too forceful.
It says Fred snapped. What am I supposed to do here?
Okay.
Okay. The attendance of any one representative is not required for a session to progress. The attendance of any one representative is not required for a session to progress.
That's awesome. That works.
It is not in your best interest to deny this call to attendance, Representative. The Watcher replied, I'm not denying it, you inbred mass of circuitry. I'm not denying it, you inbred mass of circuitry. Fred said, I said, give me a moment. He could almost feel the Watcher giving him a flat look through the sensors. For someone who depends upon my cooperation and perfection for every single transportational transaction on this planet, you have a unique view of my capabilities, Representative. Fred ignored him. As with any newly drafted planet, Earth was at the very bottom rung of the political hierarchy. With only one planet and only 9 billion people, Earth had no clout compared to the founding member species like the Ureki, the Jahul, and the White, each of which had trillions of citizens and thousands of planets. As long as Earth paid its tithes and supplied bodies for the draft, nobody cared. But this? He bit his lip, looking at the screen. This was different. This was suicide. The Gen Ferglings back home couldn't possibly think to start a war. Yet, remembering the numbers, Fred had the gut-sinking feeling that they could. Because they didn't understand. They didn't realize what they were up against. They hadn't seen the armadas, hadn't been invited to the military expositions, hadn't watched the weapons demonstrations, hadn't toured the carriers. They hadn't seen the Dasha. Realizing that his anxiety was making him sweat, Fred retrieved a tissue from the dispenser on his desk and dabbed at his forehead. He hated sweating. Hair and sweating were both signs of a lower evolutionary life form, one that could not consciously regulate its own body temperature. And Fred was hairy. And he sweated. A lot. He shaved religiously, keeping himself bald except for his eyebrows, but every time he started sweating in the... He shaved religiously, keeping himself bald except for his eyebrows, but every time he started sweating in the Regency, it felt like every alien eye was upon him, judging him, which only made him sweat worse. Damn his short, hairy, slick-skinned ferg of a grandfather. Oftentimes, Fred heard it whispered behind his back that humans were certifiably the closest relatives to the furry, stupid little ape-like creatures that loved to pound their stunted faces against rocks and eat their own excrement. It was whispered that, based on that evidence alone, humankind barely qualified for its seat in the Regency. And, worse, The physical similarities between humans and Fergs were unmistakable. Both were bipedal, upright standing, with mostly hairless bodies, big skulls, and flat ovoid faces. When compared to a computer-generated image of a Neanderthal, Fergs were almost identical, if only half the size, which, of course, made it even harder for Fred to face his more evolved peers without any confidence or dignity. So they were large Fergs. Representative Mullick, if you need to bring tissues with you, I can arrange it, the Watcher said dryly. Just give me a moment to think, Fred muttered, irritated. Don't think too hard, the Watcher replied. Amused? Nope. The Watcher replied. Amused? I'm told you might rupture something. Fred narrowed his eyes. Not even the Watcher respected him. The Watcher, who was supposed to be an impartial mediator between all species, a personal servant to every official on Kolionaut, insulted his intelligence to his face. And Fred knew he wasn't going to do a damn thing about it. Knowing he was a chicken shit, knowing the Watcher knew he was a chicken shit, Fred went back to reviewing the documents in front of him, unable to shake the nagging feeling that Earth was about to do something incredibly stupid. This one's fun.
What did you say?
I said this chapter's fun.
Fun. Why?
Because I'm talking shit on Fred the whole time.
Oh.
The numbers bothered him. A lot. Earth had never wanted to join the vast alien Congress, but like every other newly discovered life-bearing planet, it had been given no choice. Now, even 11 turns after undergoing the mandatory 63-turn trial phase and becoming a full member, Earth constantly tested the gray area of congressional laws, seeing how far it could go. And, as if Fred's job wasn't hard enough, Earthlings, the petulant little shits that they were, made no attempt to hide their disdain for Congress. They were constantly breaking trade agreements, stealing energy pods, imposing sanctions, illegally harvesting planets, and raising tariffs. There were even whispers that Earth had hired space pirates to harass neighboring solar systems, a major offense that usually brought with it 3/6 of probation. There were even whispers that Earth had hired space pirates to harass neighboring solar systems, a major offense that usually brought with it 3/6 of probation and higher enlistment quotas. It was as if they had completely forgotten why they submitted to congressional rule in the first place. Fred's written and video feed warnings never seemed to make an impact in the number of Earth's violations either. The Fergs back at home considered his position ceremonial at best and were oblivious to the danger of angering the Regency. They had not seen the devastation Congress could wreak upon... They had not seen the devastation Congress could wreak upon a rebel member. To them, Elor and... Elor? E-E-L-O-I-R?
I'm not sure how
Or-
you pronounced that last time.
Yeah, was that... Which book was it?
I think of it as Elor, but you might have done something weird to it.
I think
it
I
was
said
in
Elor.
book 2.
Okay. Book 2. Let me see if I can find it in book 2. E-E? Sorry, I already forgot how to spell
Yeah,
it.
it's Eelior.
L-I-O-R?
Look, oh, fuck, it might be... Shit. Let me go look. I was in the middle of doing a search. Give me a second.
Okay. Oh, I was looking at zero marked.
0. Well, if you've already found the document, you're doing better than I am. I've got thousands of these fuckers. Thousands of documents. Thousands. Fuck. Zero recall. There we go. There are too many spelling or grammatical errors in Zero Recall Draft 23 / TOC redo to continue displaying them. To check the spelling and grammar of this document, please choose spelling and grammar from the review tab. I do that every time. Okay. Okay, the first one shows up in chapter 4. Page 30, the very, very last page of 37.
Okay, chapter 4.
Yeah, I'll paste the I'll paste the line into your Discord. Essentially, it's like, you're too fucked up to be able to continue using spelling and grammar in this document. It will destroy our system.
Chapter 4.
Yep. Bottom of page 37, I think. But that's on the Word document. Here, I'll get the next one, too.
Yeah, I'm not going to worry about page numbers because they're going to
Okay.
look for it.
Here's another one.
Loir.
This one's in chapter 6. I'll add this one, too.
To them, Elor. Okay, got it. I'm just going to have the... I'm going to have my proofer check it, so I don't have to go dig it up right now during the stream.
Okay.
To them, Elor and Neskfat were just myths. Yet Fred had taken the mandatory tours. Remember, to them, Elor and Neskfat were just myths. Yet Fred had taken the mandatory tours after each war. He had walked the corpse-ridden continents. He had seen the slaver colonies, the factories, and the work camps. He's seen the misery, the unspeakable ruin. He knew. As soon as a planet went rogue, it was utterly crushed by the ground force and planetary.
Did you say he's seen or he had seen?
I don't know. He had seen continents. He had seen the slaver colonies. I said he had seen.
Well, no, there was
seen
several.
The misery. He'd seen the misery, the unspeakable ruin. He knew. Ground force, and as soon as a planet went rogue, it was utterly crushed by the ground force and planetary ops. Once it had been crushed so thoroughly that it could no longer resist, it became free game to the rest of Congress. Anything on it could be exploited by any enterprising species interested in claiming more land, free work, or limited resources. If Earth actually took the step and declared war, Fred had no doubt in his mind that alien races, especially the slave-hungry Dasha, would set up trading colonies on Earth's surface after the Congressional Army wiped out all of Earth's resistance. It was no secret that the Dasha had been harvesting unlucky humans for their breeding programs for the last 74 hours. Why was I going to say hours? It was no secret that the Dasha had been harvesting unlucky humans for their breeding programs for the last 74 turns. They now had their own homebred populations on dozens of Dasha planets, and illicit human slaves were now in higher demand than non-Saba. And once again, Fred was powerless to stop it. Just non-Saba, is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
And once again, Fred was powerless to stop it. That the Dasha were enslaving free, sentient species was quietly overlooked by Congress because the Dasha were the single most dangerous species in Congress. And once again, Fred was powerless to stop it. That the Dasha were enslaving free, sentient species was quietly overlooked by Congress, because the Dasha were the single most dangerous species in Congress, even outstripping the Dreet due to their sheer numbers. "The Regency is waiting, Representative Malik," the Watcher reminded him. "Just screw the Regency a moment, all right?" Fred snapped. "I have an important diplomatic issue to deal with." The Watcher sighed. Fred ignored it. Fred ignored it. If Earth ever got reprimanded, the Dasha would take over. They would use its incredibly high life-supporting resources to transform the planet into a They would use its incredibly high life-supporting resources. They would use its, I guess Earth's, okay. They would use its incredibly high life-supporting resources to transform the planet into a breeding ground for slaves, which they would then ship back to their home planets for sale. War. It looked like humans were preparing for war. They could not be that stupid. Representative Malik, I understand that you have limited resources from which to draw, but generally, if an esteemed representative such as yourself is summoned through direct node, it is a reasonable assumption that someone on the tribunal is demanding their presence. The Watcher paused for that to sink in. Further, it can be assumed that if the summonee does not respond appropriately in 15 seconds now, the messenger, that would be me, has been given special instructions to retrieve said representative for the sake of expediency and not displeasing the tribunal. Frustrated, Fred closed the file and said, "Fine. God damn it. God damn it. Fine. God damn it. Fine. God damn it. God damn it. Nah. Fine. Ah, crap. Said. Fine. God damn it. He shoved his chair away from his desk. He hated going to the Regency. Nothing ever happened at the Regency. The alien equivalent of fat old men in suits would sit around and argue for hours on end and not accomplish anything. There was nothing to accomplish. Every political breakthrough that could have been worked out by Fred and his peers had been worked out millions of turns before he was born. The system was already perfect. There was no point, especially not for him, a representative of a species of absolutely no import. The Bajna ran the banking, the Dreet ran security, the Ureki made art, the Jahul traded, the Ueshi ran the Space Force, the Dasha ran the ground force, the White stole property, lied casually, ran an assassin's guild that the Regency was too terrified to shut down, stole people's identities, and security, the Ureki made art, the Jahul traded, the Ueshi ran the Space Force, the Dasha ran the ground force, the White stole property, lied casually, ran an assassin's guild that the Regents... The Dasha ran the ground force. The White stole property, lied casually, ran an assassin's guild that the Regency was too terrified to shut down, stole people's identities, made and smuggled illicit weapons, defrauded the government, stole patents, randomly poisoned strangers, and collectively. The Dasha ran the ground force, the White stole property, lied casually, ran an assassin's guild that the Regency was too terrified to shut down, stole people's identities, made and smuggled illicit weapons, defrauded the government, stole patents, randomly poisoned strangers, and collectively made an ass out of themselves, but were balanced out by the rest of Congress. It was sheer formalities, and it bored him to tears. The white are like the Chinese of space.
That's horrible. That's racist. You're racist. Don't do that.
Why am I getting farm cheese Jeffed at? Bored him to tears. 5 seconds, Representative, the Watcher said pleasantly. Irritated now, Fred growled, Let's get this over with. No sooner had he finished voicing the words than his vision grayed out, and he felt an instant of pinprick discomfort throughout his body as the Watcher transferred him into the congressional seat of power. Built by the legendary Goiji, the Regency was an enormous spherical room whose interior was completely covered in seats, over 7,000 of them, only half of which were occupied in the anticipation of finding more members. Though it was unnerving to humans, this had been the standard congressional meeting place for over 1.5 million years, since it left no member higher than any other member. It was much like the mythical Round Table, except taken one step further. A specialized hologram hovered in the center of the room, made to be right side up to every creature in the room. Right now, the picture showed that of Right now, the picture showed that of First Citizen Ali Faye, who was older than some planets. The First Citizen was the very last of his race. He was about the size of an elephant, with wrinkled, furry blue skin covering his body. If it weren't for his red eyes and 4 sharp black tusks, he would almost have looked much like... If it weren't for his red eyes and 4 sharp black tusks, he would almost have looked much like a cross between an elephant and a polar bear. Fred could pick him out amongst the seats, his revered chair. Fred could pick him out amongst the seats, his revered chair taking up the space of a dozen. The fact that the First Citizen had taken it upon himself to make an appearance did not bode well for whatever poor planet had broken Congress's laws this time. Fred sat down and made himself comfortable, vaguely excited at the prospect of seeing a member planet chastised, since that always spiced up the usual humdrum discussion of intergalactic politics. Let's try again. Fred sat down and made himself comfortable, vaguely excited at the prospect of seeing a member planet chastised, since that always spiced up the usual humdrum discussion of intergalactic politics. When the First Citizen's image turned to him, however, Fred felt the blood drain from his face. He glanced at the seats nearest him, trying to determine if possibly the hologram only looked like it was facing him. All doubts faded when the First Citizen's alien snarl filled the room. All right, I need to go check his voice again. Baby got back. That's good. All right, here it goes. I'm opening my soundbooththeater.com library.
I was just about to ask if you need me to help you hunt down his voice somewhere. Or do you have it stored?
Well, no, I don't have it stored anywhere particular. I'm just going to reference it from book 2.
Was he in book 2?
Yep.
Oh, that's right. There was that tribunal thing at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
I can help you find that if you need it.
Ali Faye. think I'll be able to find it here. Looks like chapter 26. No, chapter 31.
Mm. Okay, here's one. Do a search for remove me to my room.
Well, that's not going to help me. I already found, let's see, 31. Chapter 31. Let's see, about right in the center. It's kind of hard to tell exactly where it is, just looking at the pages.
I'm not seeing.
What?
Hold on. Okay. Okay, there it is. It's on
I think that's
page.
him.
Mekval was attacked on his home of Jakun 5. That's Aliphay talking right there. Here, I'll paste the. It's page 300. I don't know.
Is this him?
That.
Can you hear it?
Oh, I can't hear anything.
Oh. I thought I had it on loopback audio. I do have it on loopback audio. That's weird that you can't hear it. Got it. The alien snarl filled the room. Snuffleupagus. I wish I did his voice like Snuffleupagus. All doubts faded when the first citizen's alien snarl. Representative Mullock, the speaker inset in the small lectern in front of Fred. The speaker insert in the small lectern in front of Fred made him jump. His heart began to pound, and he swallowed convulsively. The alien hologram began to snarl again. Filled the room. Representative. Filled the room. Representative room. Representative Mullock. There we go. We have received reports that your planet has begun stockpiling weapons. Are your people preparing for a war against Congress? Are your people preparing for a war against Congress? Damn it, Congress. Are your people preparing for a war against Congress? Weapons? Shit. Sweat broke out on Fred's face in a warm sheen as he quickly said, No, Representative Aliphay. Earth has no intentions of attacking any member of Congress. Humans are loyal members. Humans are loyal members. Let's go back to the Regency a moment, all right? God damn it. I want to round out. Let's get this over with. I need to round his voice out a little more. The attendance of any one representative. No, Representative Aliphay. Earth has no intentions of attacking any member of Congress. Humans are loyal members. The hologram made a snort and what sounded like a high-pitched giggle, followed by several guttural clicks. That sounds like fun. Let's see that. Let's try that out. Giggle. Okay, so I'm going to do this in 3 layers. I'm going to... Let's see, it's ambience. Why is that? Here's my efforts. Nope. It's not picking it up. 2, 2, 2, and 2. There we go. There it is. There's a good one. There we go.
That was cool.
Nope.
Oh my God, that totally sounds like an alien. Cool.
And one more.
Sin is gonna hate you for that. It almost made me vomit.
All right, guttural clicks. I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Think Alien in the Alien movies.
I think you mean Predator, right? Like this thing?
Was it the Predator movie? Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, that's cool. Was it Predator?
The hologram. Yeah. And let's export that one. Put it on the speaker. Where'd it go? 0. Here it is. Loyal members. Members. The hologram made a snort and what sounded like a high-pitched giggle, followed by several guttural clicks. There was no translation from the Watcher, which meant Ali Faye had intentionally switched his translator off as he conferred with his Bajnan assistants. Knowing what that meant, Fred broke out in goosebumps. Oh God, he thought, in growing panic. They found something. Those Fergs back home got caught. Ali Faye spoke again, and this time it was translated. Not only is your planet stockpiling ships and weapons, but it has radically increased its science funding. For peaceful uses. Science funding. For peaceful uses, Fred said quickly. 2 quickly. He winced, biting back the rest of what he had been going to say. Alife spoke, and there was an iciness to his voice that even the Watcher managed to translate. We have reason to believe that Earth has instituted a breeding program for genetically enhanced human foot soldiers. Fred's jaw dropped. The first citizen was accusing Earth of breaking the second law of Congress, the most damning thing a member planet could do, other than attacking another member planet. Well, Moloch? Alifay's hologram demanded. That's not possible, Fred babbled. Genetics experiments. You misunderstand the reports. The Shadye's... Shadye?
I think it's Shaji, but I don't know what you did.
Let me get that echo out of here. Let me see. Will this be in book 2 as well?
It's not used very often. I think that if anybody picks up a discrepancy between like where it's used once in one book and where it's used once in another book, they're gonna like be insane nerds that, you know.
Yeah, they're gonna get their money back, and we're all gonna be screwed. Okay, they're gonna demand a refund, and our reputation will be over. Okay, let's see. This is chapter 35, Kapar. After, let's see, that looks like maybe 10 minutes in. Just a little bit early now. Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry.
Do you need my help tracking
No,
something down? Okay.
Where did that go? Oh, there it is.
So is this the only series you've got to like go back and find
No.
random shit?
No, I'm trying to listen. Hold on. Shadye.
So we can't hear what you're listening to. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I don't know why you guys can't hear it. That's kind of weird. It is going through my loopback, so that's the only way I can hear it. Oh, I see. Interesting. So why am I getting an echo that you can hear? Huh. I always assume that you guys are able to hear that shit, but... Well, I might fix that someday, but not right now, because if I try and fix it now, it'll be a whole thing. Ports! The Shadi...
Yeah, we could hear that. Just
Yeah,
not what you were
but
listening to
that
before.
was... What I was listening to was going through Chrome. So when I have Chrome turned on, though, and you're talking, and you can hear your echo. You can hear the weird echoiness, which means that somehow the loopback is feeding you the Chrome thing, and my own feed. I don't know. I don't get it.
Weird.
Okay. The Shaji's snort of disdain was translated impeccably. I misunderstand nothing. My information is much better than your own, Mullock. See for yourself. At that, a human girl appeared in the center of the room, suspended in air like a rag doll. Even from that distance, Fred could tell that her eyes were glazed over, almost as if she were drugged. Immediately, an image appeared on his lectern, and on every other lectern in the Regency. It was a scan of a human brain. Embedded deep within the tissue, a square cube of white rested like a cyst. A chip much too bulky to be congressional made. Fred felt bile rising in his throat. She is one of many we have captured, Ali Faye growled. Human generals forced her to do their bidding by triggering the pain response through the rudimentary chip in her brain. That doesn't prove... Fred began. She has the ability to move objects and matter, Ali Faye interrupted. I'll go ahead and get rid of that, and I'll get rid of this, actually. She has the ability to move objects and matter. Human scientists also experimented with telepathy and energy manipulation, as well as dabbled in a failed shape-shifting project, and Earth's military is openly combating our patrols with the telekinetics and telemorphs as we speak. We already lost 3 ships to these mutated abominations. There was a roar of outrage from those gathered in the Regency. Fred suddenly wished he could shrink out of sight. Representative of Earth, Ali Faye's voice boomed. I demand a trial. Fred's mouth was suddenly dry. The entire Regency was a resounding clash of noise, 3,000 different alien languages demanding justice. Watcher, secure Representative Mullock in his room until we are ready for him. Crap. Oh, shit! Oh, fuck. I'll be right back, guys. You need help? You guys, got, okay, she's not, okay.
She's an old cat carrier, yes.
Okay. Jesus fucking Christ. My roommate's dad fell down my stairs. Thankfully, it was just a couple of them, but he's pretty old, so I think he's all right. Secure Representative Mullock in his room until we are ready for him. Before he knew what had happened, Fred had been teleported back to his room. "Watcher," Fred said in desperation. I need to confer with my colleagues." He went to the door, but found it locked. The Watcher remained silent to his pleas. When Fred went to the wall in desperation, he found that his incoming feeds were blank. As the incoming feeds, probably, is how I need to phrase it. When Fred went to the wall in desperation, he found that his incoming feeds were blank. As the representative of Earth, he was, until he could prove otherwise, guilty.
This next chapter is where the title of the whole series came from.
Gotcha. I kind of just figured that you named it that because of Batman Returns, but this makes sense too.
No, The Legend of Zero. Oh, he's got.
Yeah, he seems fine.
No,
he seems
The
alright.
Legend of Zero is the name of the chapter.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the book, not the series name,
No.
not the book name.
Series name.
I think actually you should have just one book that's called Batman Returns in the Legend of Zero series.
In the Legend of Zero series, I should have one called Batman Returns.
Yes, you should.
Well, I mean, I would do that, but I'm pretty sure I'd get sued by, what is it, DC?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't want that.
I don't know. It's good press. Get some attention, you know?
Yeah, no.
Chapter. Can you just go through the whole series and replace every instance of Joe with Batman?
Yeah, here, let me do that for you. I'm doing it right now. Just a second. I'll like patch in like the new version. Here. I'm seriously doing it right now.
You'd get so many more sales. No one would notice.
Yeah, I think you're right. This it's like subliminal messaging. I'm
wow,
totally
this is a great Batman story.
doing it now. No, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. I might actually save over my real version. I'm not doing that. That's a bad idea.
Damn. Chapter 3. The Legend of Zero. Joe cracked his eyes open to the stale taste of vomit and the sour stench of partially digested whiskey. He stared up at the dirty ceiling through a pounding headache and listened to himself breathe. The ache in his temples reminded him of Jane. He'd bought her illicit body 7 turns ago on the Jahul black market prior to landing on Daru, and not even Davine knew of her existence. Pretty sure we haven't encountered Daru yet. Daru. And not even Davine. He'd bought her illicit body 7 turns ago on the Jahul black market prior to landing on Daru,
it might be in there, just randomly thrown in once. It does not matter. It's a throwaway planet.
Gotcha. And not even Davine knew of her existence. Jo had purchased her dangerous curves and cold, sexy beauty for one purpose, and only one purpose, and Jo could almost feel her impatience with each day he put her off. Even then, she called to him from the other side of the bed, begging him to slide his hand over her ebony lines, wrap his fingers around her. Even then, she called to him from the other side of the bed, begging him to slide his hand over her ebony lines, wrap his fingers around her, tug.
Okay, so
Sorry,
Jeff, you might
I'm
actually be.
watching. My roommate's dad's on the stairs right now, and I'm watching carefully.
Okay, you might actually need to rethink this chapter.
Okay.
It's massive depression, like the deepest, darkest depression you can.
Gotcha. So it's not oh, Jo waking
It's
up from
not
another
peppy.
bender.
No,
Okay.
he is so old, so like so far done. He just wants to die.
How much older?
I think between it's like I think he's like 20 years old, 20 turns older by this point.
So 70 to 80 somewhere?
Yeah, but the congressional
Oh wait, 80 to 90 maybe.
yeah, the congressional stuff, I think he's 85, but the congressional stuff makes it like,
Right.
it doesn't show. But he's so tired of his legend. Now, here's another thing. That's not a person.
Right.
Do you
Yeah,
okay.
I got that
Okay.
part. So how is he, like, how much physically has he changed over the 20 years?
Imagine somebody who's been completely drunk for like 20 years.
But
Like
you're saying the congressional, the what makes him superhuman, right, is
it's still there.
mitigating that damage or not?
Yeah,
Okay.
but he's still haggard and he's not eating right. He's got lines in his eyes. He's just
Gotcha. Alrighty. Jo cracked his eyes open to the stale taste of vomit and the sour stench of partially digested whiskey. He stared up at the dirty ceiling through a pounding headache and listened to himself breathe. The ache in his temples reminded him of Jane. The ache in his temples reminded him of Jane. He'd bought her illicit body 7 turns ago on the Jehul black market prior to landing on Daru, and not even Davine knew of her existence. Jo had purchased her dangerous curves and cold, sexy beauty for one purpose, and only one purpose, and Jo could almost feel her impatience with each day he put her off. Even then, she called to him from the other side of the bed, begging him to slide his hand over her ebony lines, wrap his fingers around her, tug her out into the light. Not this morning, he thought. This morning, you've got to give a pep talk to a bunch of Jen Fergling kids. Which was true enough. He couldn't easily kill himself on a new batch of recruits' first day and plan ops and die with a clear conscience. Talk about an excellent way to traumatize the starry-eyed Fergs. Yeah, Jane could wait. Then that jaded, smart-ass side of him kicked into gear and gave a bitter laugh. You're just putting off the inevitable. Who cares if you blow your brains out on their first day or their 10th day? You're just being an ashing slave soul again. Get it over with, Jo. You've served your time. You shouldn't have to deal with this soot anymore. Stop being a tacky skulker and get it over with. And He was, too. It was the 2011th standard day that he'd left Jane under her pillow instead of letting her serve her purpose. 2011 days. Just over 6 turns. Joe continued to stare at the ceiling. He didn't need to look at the clock to know it said 5:31. Maybe he should say 531. Do they say 531 hours?
0531.
0531?
Carrie would know specifically. She
Yeah.
was in the military.
Carrie, we need you! Carrie!
I don't know. She was just talking. I don't know what's going on.
Carrie, oh my God! Are you still here? Any other military people in the audience who can answer this question?
They're saying it's O.
0531 hours. Looking it up. Yeah, but I mean, when you have the 31, that's the only thing that's messing with me. So I'm just going to say 0531 hours. And yeah.
Carrie just said yes, it's O. But
Okay, 0531 hundred? 0531. No one's...
I think it's just 0531.
Nailed it with which one?
Yeah, he said like 4 of them now, Carrie.
0531 hours is what I'm thinking. Okay. 0531 hours. He didn't need to look at the clock. He didn't need to look at the clock to know it said 0531 hours. He always woke 6 ticks before his alarm went off. To the second. Ticks to the second. 6 ticks to the... I mean, a tick is like basically like a second.
A tick is a minute.
Oh, okay. Yep. He always woke 6 ticks before his alarm went off. He always woke 6 ticks before his alarm went off. He always woke 6 ticks before his alarm went off. To the second. It was a habit left over from his training in planetary ops, one that he'd done his damnedest to shake. But to no avail. The bed beside him was cold, the soulmate that the lying Voggy of his fortune teller? The bed beside him was cold, the soulmate that the lying Voggy of a fortune teller. The bed beside him was cold, the soulmate that the lying Voggy of a fortune teller had promised him, still not making herself known. He squeezed his eyes shut as he heard the conversation in that tent once more. He squeezed his eyes shut as he heard the conversation in that tent once more.
So this is the gypsy fortune teller.
I remember this.
You can just copy paste it, right?
Yes.
So it's like book 1. I can go find it if you need a chapter.
That'd be good. Thank you. You will have a soulmate. Really? What's her name? She doesn't have a name. Okay. Where's she live? She hasn't been born yet. Okay, that's just a placeholder.
Would it help for me to find the actual like paragraph and page and everything?
Just tell me what chapter.
All right. Ah, damn this. Listen, fucker. Do what I want.
I know, right? Fucking device.
No matches. How can there be no matches?
Soulmate?
What?
S-O... There's
Oh,
no
I'm looking at the
space.
wrong. Ah, it's the wrong document. Fuck. Fuck. Oh,
Remem-
that's all right.
Remembering that, Joe felt his left hand shaking under the covers. After 74 turns of fighting and bleeding for Congress, she still hadn't shown up. He still spent his nights alone, his days trailed by a dozen soulless Fergs with cameras, with overseers and directors by the hundreds smiling to his face while they secretly wondered how they could best position themselves to get a good picture with the universe. He still spent his nights alone, his days trailed by a dozen soulless Fergs with cameras, with overseers and directors by the hundreds smiling to his face while they secretly wondered how they could best position themselves to get a good picture with the universe's beloved Zero. Drinking buddy and former ward of a Dreet representative. I have to burp myself like a baby. Drinking buddy and former ward of a Dreet representative, personal friend to the Peacemaster himself, survivor of 2 unsurvivable battles, the monkey who shat gold and killed Dasha.
Okay, I sent it to you.
That's a page. Those are pages. What chapter?
Oh,
Pages
you
are
need a
not going to
chapter.
help me because I'm looking through audio.
Chapter 9, it looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, it's chapter 9.
Dasha. All right. Be right back. Gotta blow my nose. It freaked me out so bad to see a person laid out on my stairs who I didn't even know was in my house in the first place.
Oh, fuck, that's weird.
It took me like 5 seconds. I was like, who? That Justin looks very different. Oh, okay. And killed Dasha. Joe clenched his shaking hand into a fist, aching inside. He'd never felt so isolated in his life. Even with every new human recruit taught to memorize his every battle, his every inane comment, his every stupid thing he'd ever done, Joe had never felt more alone than he did right then. It was like a pall that was settling over his soul, darkening it. She lied, he thought, in anguish. It had been one of the few things he'd hoped for, one of the few things he'd allowed himself to look forward to in the damned prophecy that had come to rule his life. Those 5 simple words. You will have a soulmate. And let's see. And we'll do that. Replace. Repeat from earlier. Okay. He'd ushered in a new age. He'd had a dreet rip out his still-beating heart. He'd befriended an assassin. He'd even shown mercy to a Goiji. And he was still alone. 20 turns later. He hadn't seen any dragons or any innocents. Though he was well on his way to dying in shame, he was pretty sure that wasn't what the... Though he was well on his way to dying in shame, he was pretty sure that wasn't what the patch-wearing, two-faced bitch was talking about. All right, and this one as well. And while you shall die in a cave, shamed and surrounded by dragon-slaying innocents, your deeds will crush the unbreakable, and your name will never be forgotten. Congress. She, the Trith, the White. They all wanted him to crush Congress. It gave Joe a little bit of comfort that he could screw up the entire pretty picture they all had painted for him just by pulling Jane out of hiding and pulling the trigger. The satisfaction, however, was short-lived, because he was still alone. The prophecy does say shatter instead of crush Congress. Did you purposefully change the word here just to
Yes.
give it some variety
Yes.
here? All right, just wanted to make sure.
It's because it's his interpretation.
Gotcha. Because he was still alone. Joe took another shallow breath and wondered... Nope. Because he was still alone. Joe took another shallow breath and wondered what it would be like to be a White, to be able to shed his face and live someone else's life, to become a different person. That's what he wanted, to be a different person. He hated the monster that Zero had become. He hated the constant flash of the cameras. He hated the fake smiles and starry-eyed He hated the fake smiles and starry-eyed awe. He hated the power struggles, the vying for his favor. He hated the posters, the motivational vids, the documentaries with his name splayed across the front cover in bold letters. He hated the random gifts, the desperate attempts at seduction, the odd stares. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, an unregistered plasma pistol within arm's reach, Joe would have given anything to be a White, to be able to take on a different face for a week or a lifetime. Reluctantly, he pulled himself out of bed. He stared at the floor between his bare feet for several minutes, just breathing in the smell of his own stink. He hadn't rinsed his mouth after vomiting last night. His clothes were I totally thought that the gun was going to be a sex robot, though.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's what I that's what I thought. Like, 2 paragraphs into the beginning of the chapter.
Well, oh no,
I
that
just
was
thought it
intentional. I was trying to go for that.
His clothes were the same ones he'd worn. His clothes were the same ones he'd worn the last 6 days. He couldn't remember the last time he'd bathed. Like any woman in her right mind would want me now. Like any woman in her right mind would want me now, he thought, miserable. You probably scared her off already, you greasy-skinned Ferg. But that was the problem. It didn't matter what Joe did. The Kongis loved him. If he wore his shirt untucked, the next week it became the latest fad. If he stopped rolling his sleeves, the whole human ground force stopped rolling theirs. He'd become a mascot, a figurehead, a shiny, gilded god that they could prop up in front of everyone and make smile for the camera. He could have literally any Kongi woman he wanted, human or not, just by twitching a brow of interest. Joe dropped his head into his hands and stared at the floor. Beside him, on the dresser, the alarm went off. I want, like, I want a Joe story where he's being pursued by a female dreet.
Oh, really? That's
That'd be-
interesting.
That'd be really funny. Beside him, on the dresser, the alarm went off. Let's see. He ignored it, studying the dirt and old clothes scattered over his mats. He had more than enough money to hire someone to take care of it, but he didn't bother with a maid anymore because the last one had hidden a camera in his bathroom to get pictures of him showering to sell on the net. Alone. He was totally goddamn alone. Joe twisted to turn off the alarm. Jane called to him again at the motion, a sweet, seductive melody in the back of his mind, begging him to twist a little further, to pick her up, to caress her deadly body. Joe got out of bed and stumbled over to the bathroom entrance, catching himself on the wall. He took a deep breath, let it out in a shudder, then, fully intending to straighten and walk into the shower, Joe lowered his forehead to the doorframe and cried. Alone. His every move studied, watched, and analyzed. Never had he been known by so many people, his face on every billboard, his picture revered on every human recruitment poster ever made, and never had he been so totally alone. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore, he thought, leaning into the wall. The false smiles, the politics, the subtle comments. Jane's melody was like a siren song in the back of his head. Not for the first time, he wondered if he was his... Not for the first time, he wondered if she was his soulmate. He wondered when she had been made. She was not too old. Probably born sometime in the last 74 turns. Burning physics, he thought in despair. These psychics.
I think that makes him exactly 90 then. Oh wait, no, because he wasn't fully 16 when he went to the psychic. So yeah, I think it's about 85.
No, wait, he was 14 when he got abducted, right?
Yeah, but
So how could
he
he be
went to the...
16 when he went to the psychic?
No, I'm saying he wasn't. I said he
Oh,
wasn't.
Okay. Burning psychics, he thought in despair. They speak in riddles. Miserable, Joe tore his forehead from against the wall and took a long look at the shower. It only would have taken a few minutes to sluice off all the dirt and grime, all the stink of the last week of lonely nights with Jim Beam. Joe caught his image in the mirror and grimaced. He had dark rings under his eyes. His face looked hollow, like something from an Elorian death camp. His skin was dull with grime. It was his eyes, though, that gave him pause. They'd given up. He realized it with a start that made him blink. The strength in their mountainous brown depths was flat, tired, gone. Looking at himself, Joe was once again aware that one of the Dreet's most feared hells was the hell of solitude. 666 turns of loneliness, a sacred turn of isolation that every Dreet warrior had to face before he could enter the afterlife. 20 down, 646 to go, Joe thought, with a bitter laugh. 20 down, 646 to go. There we go. Joe thought, with a bitter laugh. Not for the first time, he wondered if he'd actually died on that operating table on Jeel Sit. He wondered if he was actually wandering the Dreet hells even now, looking blindly for the afterlife. He realized he had a surefire way to find out. Those kids need me, Joe thought, miserable, staring at the rim of the sink. Have to get them through training. But he wasn't fooling anyone. They didn't need him. He wasn't the one who led them in the tunnels or taught them how to properly put down a dasha. Their commanders and overseers did that. Joe just gave speeches. Just like every other useless figurehead in the universe. They need me. They need me, Joe told himself again. A speech by Zero will make their millenniums. He looked up again and peered into his own image. Just one more speech. Then I can finish the job. That actually gave him enough strength to pull on his boots and jacket and splash alcohol over his face before heading to the door. Taking the knob in his hand, he straightened, took a deep breath, and tugged the door open. Immediately, a mass of Kongi and civilian photographers crowded him, their flashes going off in his face. They shouted questions at him, asking things like how he'd slept, what he'd eaten, whether he was planning on having kids. Joe fought the urge to grab the closest camera and smash it into the side of the building. He'd learned long ago that just made him look like a sootbag in front of billions of people, and made the photographers more crazed to get him to do it again. Prodding him like a stubborn animal that wasn't cooperating, trying to piss him off. Ignoring the cameras, Joe stepped through the paparazzi and over to his hawk. Someone had yanked the key from the console and left it on the ground beside the machine, doubtless so Joe would have to bend over to retrieve it, giving 24 reporters a good picture of his muscular ass. That was weird. A K was coming at the end of that ass, and you could hear it. Doubtless so Joe... I almost didn't say the K. Someone had yanked the key from the console and left it on the ground beside the machine, doubtless so Joe would have to bend over to retrieve it, giving 24 reporters a good picture of his muscular ass. Burning Fergs, Joe thought, hating them. Instead of bending to grab the key, as they wanted, he pulled a new one out of his pocket. The trick wasn't new, and he'd shipped in a package of 50 of them from the Hawk Company upon his arrival on Taurat. Behind him, reporters made sounds of frustration and jeered at him as he climbed onto the Hawk, put his key into the console, and powered it up. Ah, I see. Just one more speech, Joe told himself, lifting up over the rooftop. 8 Hawks followed him, each filled with 5 to 6 cameramen. They loved the Hawk pics. Easy to make him look like he was soaring into the future, head held high, ready to take on Congress's enemies the moment they reared their ugly faces. Joe hunched down against his console and tried to ignore them. He'd only been on Taurat for 13 days, and he still hadn't had the opportunity to get a customized, locked, shielded Hawk. The civilian Hawks had to stop at the edge of the Kongi training base, but the Peacemaker and Kongi crews... What time is it? The civilian Hawks had to stop at the edge of the Kongi training base, but the Peacemaker and Kongi crews continued to follow him as he... Damn it. Little burpee. The civilian Hawks had to stop at the edge of the Kongi training base, but the Peacemaker and Kongi crews continued to follow him as he crossed the training grounds and landed on the main square in front of a formation of 900 human recruits. It was obvious that the kids had been waiting for him there for a while, even though he told their instructors 18 ticks from now, which meant their battle masters had probably had them standing there since dawn. Sighing, Joe yanked the key from his Hawk and disembarked. He tried to ignore the massive black-clad cameramen as they positioned themselves around the parade grounds, ignoring the Kongi commanders and overseers waiting in a formation of their own a few rods away, aiming to get that next multi-million credit motivational poster pic. When they got in his way, crouching on the ground to look up and snap shots of him with the rising sun to his back, Joe suppressed another urge to kick the cameras out of their hands. They loved that, too. Showed his innate aggression, his fighting spirit. Joe closed his eyes and swallowed. His left hand had begun trembling of its own accord again. Fisting it, ignoring the reporters, he walked around them, up to the first rank of human Plan Ops recruits, all battle masters and above, as was required for application, and paused to give them a long look. To their credit, they didn't fidget. The only sound was that of the wind whipping in their battalion colors and the scuffs and clicks of the photographers getting their pics of Zero, training yet another wave of human recruits. Joe took a deep breath, put on his Zero mask, and barked. All right, I have to change my speaker track here. Oops. So, should be... All right, let me go ahead and do it. I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! Alright, so... maybe it should be Shit TV? Let's see. I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! Okay. Less overdrive, or less, I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! Size, let's go high side. I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! Not that big. I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! Let's kill the distortion a little bit more. I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! Reverb should definitely go up. I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! It can be a little dirtier than that. I hear you Fergs want to be Plan Ops! There we go. Immediately, 900 voices shouted, it's Kaki, right? Kaki Ura.
Yeah, it's in book 1. I could go find it if you need me to.
I think I can get it. Let's see. Kiki, maybe? Hey, right at the top of chapter 8. That's easy.
Yeah, you found it before I did.
herd ahead of our pod. We will arrive in Kofat's system tomorrow, 2 weeks later than the rest of the regiment. Today's classes are on what to expect planetside. Understand? As taught, the children shouted out, Kakeura! Good. Kakei. Kakeura! 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 All right, I think it's enough. Kakeura! Nope, wrong book. Oh, yeah? Joe started stalking down the line, looking them up and down with every ounce of disapproval he could muster. So, he's not at a podium, is he?
No, he's at the front of the formation. There's a echo.
Yeah, I've fixed it. All right, so let's just put him in his regular track then. Kakeura! Oh, yeah? What'd they do? What'd they do? Send me Nish? Like thunder, his response was, Anan Ura! 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 Shouted, Kakeura! Shouted, Kakeura! Hanan Ura! Yeah, well. Joe did a circuit, then went down the lines, taking time to look at every face. We'll see. This was the part that was legendary about his speeches. He made them all sweat. Every single one of them. And with good reason. If they couldn't cut it, he wasn't going to pass them on to go get their comrades killed. You're missing teeth. You're missing teeth, Ferg, Joe said, stopping to peer at a smaller, freckled male recruit. You ain't grown in your what? You ain't grown in your adult ones yet? Anan ura. Yet? Anan ura. The kid mumbled, still staring straight ahead. Great, Joe thought. Human teeth, unlike the rest of a body's anatomy. Human teeth, unlike the rest of a body's anatomy, stubbornly stuck to a more normal growth schedule, despite congressional attempts to bypass it. He was probably looking at an 8-year-old. Burning great. How old are you? Joe demanded. That made the kid flinch. 7 turns, sir. Ash. Joe would have asked more, but he heard a snicker from somewhere down the line. You! Joe snapped, swiveling on a massive, burly recruit with a smug grin on his face. You! Joe snapped. Get your soot-bag ass out of my line. The burly kid's grin dropped. For a moment, he just stood there. You deaf? Go clean toilets, Ferg! Plan Ops doesn't want you! The startled, bull-necked kid gave Joe a look of panic. But I was the best rifleman in my regiment. You think I give a dosh a flake how well you shoot? Plan Ops works as a team! You can't work with the team, you get yourself and everyone else killed. Now get out of here. I can teach people how to shoot. I can't teach them not to be stupid. I can teach people how to shoot. I can't teach people. I can teach people how to shoot. I can't teach them. I can teach people how to shoot. I can't teach them not to be stupid. How to shoot. I can't teach them not to be stupid. And so it went. Joe wandering the ranks, weeding out the ones who snickered or twitched or just gave Joe a bad feeling. The overseer and commanders never questioned his decisions, just grabbed the kids and led them off, utterly secure in their faith that Zero knew what he was doing. And Joe, because he could get away with it, sent home the ones who reminded him of people he had once known. He sent home the innocent kids that reminded him of He sent home the innocent kids that reminded him of Maggie, the nervous ones who had scared. He sent home the innocent kids that reminded him of Maggie, the nervous ones who had scared hazel eyes like Elf, the happy ones who had laugh dimples like Scott, the stubborn ones who challenged him like Monk. Let's try one more time. He sent home the innocent kids that reminded him of Maggie, the nervous ones who had scared hazel eyes like Elf, the happy ones, the nervous ones who had scared hazel eyes like Elf, the happy ones who had laugh dimples like Scott, the stubborn ones who challenged him like Monk. He left the ones who reminded him of Libby, though. Those got to stay every time. When Joe was finally finished, he went back to face the front of the now much-thinned ranks. So, you think you're worthy of Plan Ops just 'cause some bureaucrat liked your paperwork? He demanded at those who remained. Joe looked the perfectly straight columns of black-clad recruits up and down in open disgust. You're not. Take a look at the Congies in front of you. He gestured to the overseer and commanders in charge of his Plan Ops regiment. These unlucky Ferglings volunteered to train you. They are worthy of wearing the Plan Ops tattoo. You, undisciplined sootbags, are just boots who wanted to be heroes. Let's see. I forgot. I need to change something here.
who wanted to be heroes.
Joe stopped pacing and rounded suddenly to face the straight-faced ranks of kids. To their credit, they never flinched when the legendary Zero scowled at them like they'd just stolen his favorite PPU. Inwardly, Joe felt a pang of regret, knowing that most of these grounders weren't going to make it past their first battle.
Kids, he thought. They're just kids.
He forced that down and went on.
The men and women behind me have been through hell and survived. Some have even spent 40, 50, even 60 turns burning up Congress's enemies. They were generous enough to want to share their knowledge with you pathetic, useless Fergs, so pay attention. Watch your superior officers. Do what they tell you. Learn what they have to teach, and maybe you'll come out of your first battle alive.
Joe looked them all over one last time, then said,
Now go to chow. Get signed into the barracks, and find something productive to do with your inadequate asses until 0500 tomorrow morning, when your real work begins. Dismissed!
It wasn't his most graceful speech, but by the way the starry-eyed battlemaster's he'd passed broke up in an odd daze afterwards, he guessed it had worked anyway. It was a running joke in the human ground corps that Commander Zero could go into any congressional cafeteria, unbutton his fly, piss in the Nuajon machine, and Congress would rush to charge extra. Joe, who spent each night alienated and alone, who had no close friends to share drinks with because he couldn't stand the outright hero worship, no lovers because every possible candidate had seen his picture heroically stomping on Dasha skulls, or Joe, who spent each night alienated and alone, who had no close friends to share drinks with because he couldn't stand the outright hero worship, no lovers because every possible candidate had seen his picture heroically stomping on Dasha skulls or squashing White Zora with his boot, was fighting the urge to test the cafeteria theory just about daily. In fact, he felt so far removed from the legend of Zero that it didn't even seem like the same person to him anymore. Just some usurper that had stolen his life and made him miserable. Excellent speech, Director Zero, a man with 3 inner circles of a secondary overseer said to him, beaming with a huge official smile. All around them, cameras flashed as he approached and, with exaggerated care and pause, held out his hand for Joe to shake. Prick, Joe thought immediately. He hated to be called Director anything. After Forgotten blew up A's, Joe had been assigned to lead an interspecies kill squad composed mainly of Dasha and Dreet, tasked to take out After Forgotten blew up A's, Joe had been assigned to lead an interspecies kill squad composed mainly of Dasha and Dreet, tasked to take out the AZ Prime Sentinel Ravor Gaez and his misdirected. After Forgotten blew up A's, Joe had been assigned to lead an interspecies kill squad composed mainly of Dasha and Dreet, tasked to take out the AZ Prime Sentinel Ravor Gaez and his misdirected and fiercely loyal crew of renegade sentinels. Loyal crew of renegade sentinels. Somehow, Joe had not only inexplicably stayed alive, but had kept some of the Dasha and Dreet on his own team alive. Somehow, Joe had not only inexplicably stayed alive, but had kept some of the Dasha and Dreet on his own team alive as well, and that feat had apparently impressed the bureaucrats enough that they had belatedly offered him Phoenix's ill-begotten corps directorship. And that feat Somehow, Joe had not only inexplicably stayed alive, but had kept some of the Dasha and Dreet on his own team alive as...
I think your emphasis is wrong on that sentence, and that's part of what's fucking you up.
Well, I know I just got it wrong that time.
No, it's been every time. Somehow, Joe had not only inexplicably stayed alive, but had kept some of the Dasha and the Dreet and Dreet on his own team alive. So it's like
Gotcha.
emphasizing. Yeah.
Somehow, Joe had not only inexplicably stayed alive, but had kept some of the Dasha and Dreet on his own team alive as well, and that feat had apparently impressed the bureaucrats enough that they had belatedly offered him Phoenix's ill-begotten corps directorship. The Kostya that came with it hadn't... The Kostya that came with it hadn't mentioned subduing the AZ rebels or helping Flea uncover yet another white conspiracy. Fuck. Let's see if I can close that up. White conspiracy. Good. White conspiracy. It had been given to him for uniting great warriors with extreme differences using pitiable natural resources. Something that, of course, had only added to his legend. He hadn't received his commendation for stopping a Congress-wide war or saving the Zilla family or the surviving AZ from extermination. He had gotten it because he managed to convince a Dasha and a Dreet not to kill each other over who got to sleep on which side of the transport ship. Accepting his corps directorship had been done with more than a little righteous... Accepting his corps directorship had been done with more than a little righteous vindication, and it was the worst mistake Joe had ever made. He had hated the office, and after 1.5 turns of driving a desk while his friends and peers were off fighting battles and getting themselves killed, Joe had gone to the Galactic Corps Director and asked her nicely for a demotion. When that hadn't worked, and she'd given him a line of soot about Congress needing its heroes to lead the next generation, Joe had punched her in the face. They probably would have left him driving a desk after that anyway, but Joe had then intercepted and disabled a 4-member Dreet Directorate squad that had been sent to babysit him under the guise of bodyguards, stolen a ship at gunpoint, gone AWOL, shown up on Rostari with a biosuit and plasma rifle, and had incapacitated or assimilated the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Peacemaker team that had been sent to retrieve him. All the while, he was killing Renegade Jakaln, Hebbet, and Drate, leading a hand-picked multi-species ground team through the mountainous woodlands of Rostari, and taking over and commanding a besieged congressional outpost in his spare time, holding it against all odds and turning the tide on yet another war. All right, let's see if that even sounds good. All the while, he was killing Renegade Jakaln, Hebbet, and Drate. Is it Drate?
I think that's the pronunciation you've used before, yeah.
Okay. Drate, leading a hand... leading a hand-picked multi-species ground team through the mountainous woodlands of Rostari, and taking over and commanding a besieged congressional outpost in his spare time. All right, how did I pronounce Rostari? 2nd and 3rd Peacemaker team that had been sent to retrieve him. The biosuit and plasma rifle, and had incapacitated or assimilated squad that had been sent to babysit him under the guise of bodyguards, stolen a ship at gunpoint, gone AWOL, shown up on Rostari, and taking over and commanding a besieged team through the mountainous woodlands of Rostari, and taking... All right, I'm just gonna start over. All the while, he was killing Renegade Jakaln, Hebbet, and Drate, leading a hand-picked multi-species ground team through the mountainous woodlands of Rostari, and taking over and commanding a besieged All the while, he was killing Renegade Jakaln, Hebbet, and Drate, leading a hand-picked multi-species ground team through the mountainous woodlands of Rostari, and taking over and commanding a besieged congressional outpost in his spare time, holding it against all odds and turning the tide on yet another war. There we go. After that, Congress left him alone. Joe wasn't quite sure what his official rank was anymore, since they had stopped paying him around the same time he'd busted the Galactic Corps director's prissy snub nose. But everyone except the hardcore bureaucrats simply called him Commander Zero. To the people who drove desks or spent their time rubbing elbows with fame and fortune, however, he was always Director Zero. It was one of the first and easiest ways for Joe to tell if he was dealing with honest-to-God hero worship or an ambitious sleazeball looking for a leg up. The man standing in front of him, as if the fake grin posing for the cameras and plaster-cast courtesy wasn't a dead giveaway, had already named himself the scum of the Corps with his officially brisk but oozing fake cheerfulness, Director Zero, spoken in the overly friendly tone that made Joe's guts twist with the need to punch something. Joe continued to ignore the secondary overseer, pretending to analyze the recruits as they departed, hoping the leech would take a hint and go away. He didn't. The man continued standing there, hand out like he expected Joe to take it, a stupid, sycophantic smile on his face. Because Joe had ascended, because he'd left the Corps behind, because he'd survived 2 unsurvivable wars, because he'd road-burned a Dasha and lived to tell about it, because he'd turned 3 squads of peacemakers to fight with him, because he was alive. Joe wasn't a mortal to them anymore. Mortals died. Mortals got paid. Gods got worshipped. When he was bored, Joe wondered what kind of robotic Joe Dobbs Congress would When he was bored, Joe wondered what kind of robotic Joe Dobbs Congress would fabricate to continue his legend once he finally put Jane to good use. Congress, after all, couldn't have its legends dying on it. Bad publicity. When he was really bored, Joe wondered if his double was already built, and whether it was getting his paycheck. Though, aside from a little bitterness that he was perpetually stuck doing Congress's work for free, the lack of rank and pay didn't affect Joe overly much. 3 billion credits went a long way, especially when he'd finally wised up and put his last billion into the hands of a Bajnan stockbroker. Now, effectively rankless and jobless, Joe took whatever human assignment he wanted, whenever he wanted. Now, effectively rankless and jobless, Joe took whatever human assignment he wanted, whenever he wanted it, with Congress kissing his ass every step of the way. He was actually doing an old friend from Rastari a favor in going back to Torat and taking on the current load of recruits, since she had a younger sister in the batch and she wanted Joe to help get the kid up to snuff before they He was actually doing an old friend from Rastari a favor in going back to Torat and taking on the current load of recruits, since she had a younger sister in the batch and she wanted Joe to help get the kid up to snuff before they shipped her off somewhere nasty, like Dravis or L4. Yet another reason Joe had to keep putting Jane off. Some friend's little sister. Great. He wondered how many little sisters there were out there, and how many of them he was going to end up training in order to put off the inevitable. Apparently, the secondary overseer organizing that morning's formation didn't notice Joe's dismissive grunt or the fact Joe never took his hand, because the man's sycophantic smile never twitched. He dropped his arm back to his side. Excellent speech, Director Zero. Excellent speech, Director Zero. Will you be coming to join us for dinner in the Officers Club tonight? Will you be coming to join us for dinner in the Officers Club tonight? There we go. The grinning Ferg asked. I eat alone, Overseer. Joe squinted at the guy's name tag. Death. I ate alone, Overseer. Joe squinted at the guy's name tag. Death? He blinked and raised a brow. Death? Really? The sycophantic smile slipped a little at the sarcasm in Joe's voice. It is customary for overseers and above to choose their own monikers. Yeah. But death? Come on, man. You got raisins for balls? Even as the secondary overseer was bristling, a curvy prime commander stepped up to him and said... A curvy prime commander stepped up to him and said... A curvy... Nothing escapes death. She winked at... Nothing escapes death. She winked at Joe. Unless you're the burning first citizen. Death's got some good stories if you care to hear them. Join us for chow, Commander. Joe gave her voluptuous body a less than polite once-over, then grunted at her, too. I ate alone. The secondary overseer muttered something impolite and turned to leave. Joe thought he heard drunken Asher under the guy's breath, but he wasn't sure. And frankly didn't care. Justin just snuck up on my ass. And frankly didn't care. How about dinner for two, then? The woman asked once the overseer was out of earshot. Her smile had broken, and there was curiosity in her eyes more than anything. Else. Sorry, not interested. He'd actually come to enjoy his quiet time at night. It was one of the few times he didn't have to worry about turning a corner and running into the paparazzi. Peacemaker propagandists loved his ass and paid top dollar for a good pic. Are we literally talking about his ass since, the paparazzi purposefully wanted to take a picture of his ass before?
Well, no, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's just
That's what I
him.
thought. Just wanted to make sure. Then, at the woman's flicker of disappointment, he realized he was turning down a date with a pretty lady because he wanted to play yet another game of solitaire with Jim Beam. I'm getting to be an old man, he thought, with a start. Congressional drugs and rejuvenation put his body physiologically at about 30 to 35 Earth years of age. But after so many pretty young girls with hero worship in their eyes hadn't even so much as made his cock twitch, he'd long ago begun to wonder if he even still had charges in his pistol. Still, he'd learned the hard way, again and again, that Kongi women just couldn't see past the motivational vids, the heroic poses, the recruitment posters, the legends. They didn't care about him. They cared about his friend in the tribunal. They cared that he had once been primed the current peacemaster, who still visited him whenever his duties brought him through the area. They cared that he had been one of only 2 legendary humans to have survived Elor and Neskfat, and was the only one officially still alive. They cared that he owned a yacht and had Bajnan brokers overlooking a dozen different bank accounts on Elor. They didn't care about Joe. They wanted to take him out in public and get their picture taken with the legend so they could send it back home to their Aunt Jenny, or tell the tabloids about the size of his cock during an hour-long expose of his love-making skills, after which they quit the army and retire to Kaleu to live on the royalties. Skills, after which... Not for the first time, Joe cursed himself for going back to Torat rather than finding another war to get lost in. He was turning to leave when the Prime Commander touched his arm. "Sir." "Justin, you stompy bitch." "Sir," she said sincerely, her face a picture of innocence. "You don't have to go at it alone." Joe knew it wasn't kind, but he snorted anyway.
No offense, lady, but shows what you know.
He tugged his arm out of her grip and turned to stalk across the parade grounds to the place where he'd left his hawk. He wasn't sure if he was actually sincere and if she...
No offense, lady.
He wasn't sure if she was actually sincere or not, but he'd had way too many innocent-looking girls grab him by the arm and look up at him with those same soulful doe eyes and say something similar, only to find a new documentary. He wasn't sure if she was actually sincere or not, but he'd had way too many innocent-looking girls grab him by the arm and look up at him with those same... He wasn't sure if she was actually sincere or not, but he'd had way too many innocent-looking girls grab him by the arm and look up at him with those same soulful doe eyes and say something similar, only to find a new documentary about him on the news feeds a couple weeks later, narrated by the very girls he'd taken to bed. Undercover reporters for one of the Peacemaker news agencies. After his innocent young playmate had left him one morning without even a note. Jaded didn't even begin to describe Joe's outlook on life. He knew as much, but he didn't really care. Not anymore. He didn't care about much of anything anymore. He woke up each morning, forced himself to leave Jane under his pillow, got out of bed, went to the mirror, and recited to himself what he had to live for. War. That was pretty much the extent of it. He lived for war. He lived for the buzz of plasma, the scent of ozone and burned flesh. He used the Legend of Zero to scare a few recruits into shaping up, then went home to drink himself into another stupor. Pretty, burning, pathetic. As Joe got on his hawk and drove himself home, he wondered what Davine would have thought, seeing him now. Without even looking at himself in a mirror, Joe doubted Davine would approve. He knew his uniform was rumpled, his boots laced haphazardly, his sleeves loose and baggy. He had permanent rings under his eyes from an increasingly chronic insomnia. His gut was starting to pooch from 20 turns of being able to eat whatever he wanted, and his left hand started to shake again whenever he didn't have a good stiff drink, so he drank whenever he was alone. And as the man wearing Zero's legend, Joe was always alone. Zero's legend. Joe was always alone. All right, guys. That's going to be it for me today. We haven't finished the chapter up, but the chapter's going to keep going for a long time, and I got to do a few things before my next meeting. So, we'll pick up right here tomorrow.
Same time?
Same time, actually a little bit earlier. I'll be aiming for noon Central straight up instead of noon 15. But
Okay, sweet.
yeah, guys, thank you so much for coming to hang out. I'm having a bunch of fun with this one now, so I'm sure you guys are having fun as well. Hope to see you again tomorrow, and y'all have a good day.
All right, see ya.
See you guys.